Goeiedag vriende, dit is vandag die 4de episode van wêreldwyd hier op Marula Media, waar ons elke week gesels oor die groot internasionale nuus van die afgelope paar dae. Nou het daar nie baie dinge die afgelope tyd gebeur nie. Ons het natuurlik die belangrike Europese verkiesings gesien. Byna 400 kiesers in 27 van die Europese Unie se lidlande wat verlede week gaan stem het of kon gaan stem het. Uiteindelik het meer as 50% van hulle wel aan hierdie verkiesing deelgeneem. 720 lede van die Europese parlement wat verkies is en ja, 'n reuse verskywing in Europese politiek. Die media berig natuurlik oor die feit dat daar 'n groot verskywing na regs plaasgevind het, regse politieke partye wat duidelik baie meer setels gewen het. Ons het veral gesien dat dit in plekke soos Frankryk gebeur het, natuurlik die party van Marine Le Pen wat daar groot gewen het, maar ons het dieselfde verskywing in byna die meeste Europese lande gesien. Sentrumregse en regse partye wat heel wat steun gewen het. Nou, ons gaan vandag se program baie sterk fokus op die uitslae van hierdie Europese verkiesing en wat dit vir Europa beteken, wat dit vir die hele wêreld beteken. Ek het twee gaste wat met ons gaan gesels daaroor. Eers 'n gas uit Rotterdam in Nederland en daarna ook 'n gas uit Spanje. So, voor ons meer praat oor die Europese verkiesing, wat anders het nog gebeur? Watter ander groot nuus was daar die afgelope week? Ek dink die besluit vroeër hierdie week in die Verenigde Nasies se Veiligheidsraad, waar 14 van die 15 permanente lede van die Veiligheidsraad ten gunste van 'n Amerikaanse resolusie oor die oorlog in die Gaza-strook gestem het, is baie belangrik. Ons het die afgelope paar maande gesien dat daar verskeie pogings was van lidlande van die Verenigde Nasies om resolusies in te dien om uiteindelik 'n einde te bring aan die oorlog in die Gaza-strook. Uiteindelik vroeër hierdie week Amerikaanse resolusie wat aanvaar is, net een van die 15 lidlande van die Veiligheidsraad wat buite stemming gebly het, Rusland, maar omdat niemand daarteen gestem het nie, het ons nou gesien dat hierdie resolusie wel goedgekeur is. Dit beteken dat die voorstel van Amerika geïmplementeer moet word en dat ons waarskynlik binne die volgende paar dae sal sien dat daar 'n skietstilstand ooreenkoms in die Gaza-strook geïmplementeer word, dat Israeliese soldate sal begin onttrek. Die groot vraag is of Hamas sy kant van die ooreenkoms sal nakom en natuurlik tot watter mate Israel wel hierby sal hou. So, 'n baie interessante verwikkeling, hierdie ooreenkoms wat uiteindelik bereik is met die steun van Arabiese lande aan die een kant en natuurlik die Amerikaners aan die ander kant. So, na 8 maande van oorlog in die Gaza-strook, lyk dit of dit moontlik is dat daar uiteindelik wel vrede gesluit kan word. Dan konflik waaroor ons min praat, en as jy die internasionale media gaan lees, hoor ons eintlik min daaroor, en dit is die burgeroorlog in Sudan. Eintlik oor die algemeen oorlog en konflik in Afrika, wat natuurlik nie die internasionale agenda domineer nie. Ons praat baie oor die oorlog in Oekraïne, die oorlog in die Gaza-strook, en soveel ander konflik, maar op die Afrika-kontinent is daar natuurlik voortdurend burgeroorloë en ander oorloë waar daar 'n reuse dodetal is. In Sudan sien ons reeds dat 10.000 mense die afgelope jaar in hierdie burgeroorlog dood is. En ja, ons het gister gehoor dat in die stad Al-Fashar in Darfur die laaste hospitaal gesluit het, soos wat die rebellegroep, die Rapid Support Forces, besig is om beheer oor te neem oor hierdie stad. In een enkele incident vroeër hierdie week is daar letterlik meer as 1000 mense dood in een slagting. Dit haal natuurlik nie die voorblaai van die koerante nie. Nou, ons sal binne die volgende 2 weke hier op die program op wêreldwyd baie spesifiek fokus op konflik in Afrika, wat dit vir ons in Suid-Afrika beteken, maar ook vir die hele res van die wêreld. So, later 'n bietjie 'n program wat sal fokus op konflik in Afrika, maar dit is wel belangrik om te sien wat hier gebeur. Die oorloë in die DRK, waar daar ook onlangs weer 'n Suid-Afrikaanse soldaat dood is, konflik in Sudan, en in in verskeie ander Afrika-lande en uiteindelik gaan dit ons in Suid-Afrika raak. Die een manier waarop dit ons sekerlik raak is die toenemende stroom van immigrante uit die res van Afrika na Suid-Afrika. Maar soos ek in die inleiding gesê het, ons fokus vandag op die uitslae van die Europese parlementsverkiesing. Hierdie verkiesing wat sonder twyfel onthou sal word nog oor die volgende nie net dae en weke nie, maar waarskynlik ook maande. En ek het twee baie interessante gaste wat vandag met ons die uitslag van hierdie verkiesing gaan ontleed. Ek kan eintlik beide as vriende beskryf en ek wil by voorbaat vir ons gereelde luisteraars en kykers sê, of om verskoning vra miskien, dat ons vandag heel wat Engels gaan praat, maar ek dink wel dit is die moeite werd dat ons anders as die afgelope paar weke twee Engelse onderhoude voer, een met 'n persoon in Rotterdam in Nederland, die ander in Spanje, wat vir ons baie lekker 'n beeld kan gee of 'n interpretasie kan gee van hierdie verkiesingsuitslae. Die eerste persoon op vandag se program is Craig Burgers. Nou Craig is iemand wat ek nou al in Nederland en in Amerika ontmoet het. Dis iemand met beide Amerikaanse en Nederlandse burgerskap en wat groot geword het in Amerika, maar wat werklik waar nie net die Amerikaanse politiek verstaan nie, maar ook die Europese politiek baie goed verstaan. En Craig is iemand wat sedert hy die afgelope paar jaar ook in Nederland woon, 'n goeie blik het van die Nederlandse politiek en hoe dit by die Europese politiek inskakel. Craig, it's good to have you on the program. How are the weather there in Rotterdam today? Wonderful to have you on the program this week. How are things? My other friends in the Netherlands are all complaining constantly about the weather, but I see in the background there's a little blue sky.
But it is literally a little blue sky. If you could see the rest, it is all gray and cold.
Yes.
It has been quite rainy. So
that's the Netherlands, right? You've also been involved in some ways in the Dutch politics over the last few years. What is if we can just start in the Netherlands maybe, what is your view on the election result, the European election result in the Netherlands? I mean, it's only been how much? A few months, 7 months or so after the general election that we had in the Netherlands last year.
Mhm. Well, on one hand, of course, just like we've seen in the rest of Europe, the results were quite a shift for the right. In this case, Geert Wilders and the PVV, who made significant gains. On the other hand, the results were not as large as many people predicted and perhaps hoped for. And this also kind of mirrors a lot of the results we saw in wider European Union. So Wilders still did quite well. He's the second biggest party, but the coalition of the Labour Party and the Green Left Party actually got more seats, even though they lost one seat in comparison with their combined total from the last election. And Geert Wilders gained 5 seats. It was not as big of a shakeup as was predicted.
Yes. What is interesting, I think, in a sense, is that in the Netherlands, in the European elections, the right wing votes in smaller proportions or percentages than, say, in a country like France or so. That was the case in the past also.
Yes, and this is absolutely the case here in the Netherlands. I mean, that is definitely probably the largest reason why the PVV did not capitalize on its gains from the general election. Based on a lot of the exit polls, they estimate, I forget the exact number, but maybe 40% of people who voted for the PVV in the general election stayed home at the European election. And that's a wider problem in a lot of European countries among right-wing voters, conservative voters, is they really have a distaste for the current state of the European Union. They see the European Parliament and European Union as corrupt and unchangeable. So they say, what's the point? And they stay at home. And that has results. Now, yeah, in some countries, this is not the case. In other countries, the right has been motivated to come out to the polls. So that's something definitely, if I was Geert Wilders, for example, I would definitely be paying attention to.
Yes.
Is it, in a sense, still a case of the right wing and the right wing parties in general in the Netherlands not having such a good operations? You know, the left wing parties are very well organized. You know, they, if you look at Dutch politics, in my view, usually the left wing parties have very good structures, branch structures. They have people on the ground, very well organized in terms of their operations, their political operations. You don't really see that with Geert Wilders and his Party for Freedom.
No, definitely not. And that's definitely an issue with, I mean, you know, even though it's made up of many personalities and stuff, at the end of the day, the PVV is a one-man operation in a way. It doesn't have regular local divisions and youth division and other things. And so this hurts definitely in elections such as this one, I think, of getting the message to the ground.
But the biggest news was France. What happened in France and Le Pen, and that's interesting. You know, don't you also think it's a huge mistake from the view of Emmanuel Macron to decide to call a snap election in France?
You know, that's really interesting, and you know, many people have tried to analyze this from the left and from the right. I mean, it was a surprise on all sides, what he's thinking and what his plan is here. So, and I honestly don't know exactly either. It's a big gamble, I think. But perhaps he sees this as the only way forward, that he really just doesn't have the political capital to continue if he does nothing. So maybe he felt that otherwise he's just going to be stuck, and his situation will continue to deteriorate in the meantime if he's not able to accomplish anything. So that's what I think ultimately happened, is he just saw, you know, he basically is throwing his cards on the table and saying, well, let's get this over with and see what happens. But yes, France is very interesting. Of course, the results for Le Pen, but also further on the right, we saw Zemmour enter. That's not really talked about. And that's actually what's interesting. European-wide, we talk about the general shift to the right, and we focus on a lot of the larger established parties that we know. But actually, if you look all over Europe, north, south, east, west, you see similar results, and you see a lot of brand new parties that most people are not aware of, all on the right, really, or mostly on the right, that are entering the parliament for the first time. So this will be quite fascinating to see what happens with that.
Yes. The big question there, and you do understand right-wing politics in Europe, the problem in the past was for these political parties to work together. What is the reason for that? Is it simply that they differ on policy issues or different nationalities, you know, that you can't bring them together? But that's their big challenge.
Has historically been the big challenge. I believe it will continue to be the big challenge. There are multiple reasons for this. Some are, you know, historical, and others, I think definitely a big issue is there are a lot of right-wing parties that believe they can cooperate with the center-right or other parties. And then there are another group of right-wing parties that are more radical, who say we need a fundamental change in the system. And, you know, one group of parties does not want to ruin their strategy by being associated with the other group. So there's a lot of variety of reasons. I mean, what's really going to be interesting now is what happens, because so take Orban, for example. His party is currently in no faction, and he has stated for a long time that he wants to organize a new, larger, more encompassing political faction on the right. And so now we have all these new parties coming in. So it'll be really interesting to see what they're able to piece together, who's included, who's left out. So yeah, it'll be interesting next days.
Absolutely. What is also just interesting for me is how the agenda changed in 5 years, you know, from the big climate hysteric kind of messages 5 years ago, the Green Party in Germany becoming one of the biggest political parties in Europe actually at that point, you know, After that, you had all the farmer protests, and when many people here in South Africa think of the Netherlands, and they talk to me about the Netherlands, they always talk about the farm protests. That's interesting. People make that connection between the farmer protests. And so many things have changed. The climate issue is just for many Europeans not the main issue anymore. Is that right?
Yes and no. So I believe actually, and I believe the polling and exit polls show this, that actually the majority of normal Europeans do have still a lot of these concerns of the climate. They haven't changed radically or given up. It's really a matter of precedence. And I think to many Europeans, so many normal average European voters who are not easily colored right left, while they do care about environmental issues and what they would call climate issues often, the issue of migration especially has really taken precedence, and in general anti-establishment attitudes. So I would not necessarily say it's a huge shift away from these. I think just that the issue of migration has just, due to various reasons, has come more and more to the forefront across all countries of Europe. And where the left has chosen not to adjust to this, and they're paying the consequences. So yeah, when you see these, because you saw that if you look at the exit polls, people still, climate was still there, but it's just, I think migration took place. So
That's very interesting. Just for people who are not well aware of the facts, not everyone here necessarily always follow European politics. Just give us an idea again why people are so concerned about this immigration problem. Because, in the Netherlands last year with your general election, it was also one of the main issues, immigration. And you actually need to visit the Netherlands to see the problem and understand the problem. But just give us an overview of why immigration is such a big problem.
Well, it varies from country to country, but the general facts is that migration has been the numbers are extremely large, and it has had, and due to those large numbers, you really have a multitude of issues. These issues they affect a lot of things. Integration, for example, becomes much more difficult. In the Netherlands specifically, you have to remember the Netherlands is a very crowded country. And the Netherlands, and we right now, we have a lot of consequences of that. For example, there's a big shortage of housing right now. It's a huge problem, especially for young people. They're not able to find housing, which means they can't start a family, which has all sorts of rolling consequences. But yet the Netherlands is importing a huge amount of people into the country every year. And at the same time, because of the climate goals and such, they want to decrease the amount of pollution, the amount of nitrogen. Well, if your population keeps increasing, that's very hard, and you need to build new housing. These goals, you can't square them away. So in the Netherlands, that's been a big issue. Of course, there's also issues in various countries with extremism, religious extremism, crime, the social system having to endure. And so all of these issues are really coming to a head right now. And
Yes.
yeah, and I think the left up until now has not addressed this. And it was interesting in the general election here, it was brought up multiple times in the debates, and they're like, basically the question arose, how can we reduce the amount of nitrogen and pollution and build more and more housing and keep importing people in the country? And the left just was like, wow, that's not a problem. They haven't come up with a reasonable response to it.
Yes. Very interesting. Um, I want to talk about the comparison between Europe and America, because you also understand American politics very well. So I need to touch on that. You've seen so many European leaders warning about Trump and Trump being re-elected this year, and Trump focusing on immigration and the border and all of that. But if you look at what's happening in Europe, it's actually the same problems. It's the same issues, that people face. If you live in America, you live in Europe. Is that right?
Yes and no, but there's definitely been a huge interest. Definitely, the United States and European politics have become much closer over the years. If you go back 10, 20 years, especially in the United States, nobody was really paying attention to European politics or outside. Americans are often very inward looking. And that's definitely not the case nowadays. You see a huge interest from Americans about politics abroad. You see figures such as Tucker Carlson, for example, interviewing Orban, talking about South Africa, stuff that was unimaginable 20 years ago. So Americans are paying attention on one hand, and of course, European politics are definitely getting cues from American politics. And I think this is because, a lot of these issues are not just American or European or Australian even. There's problems that are pan-Western, let's say, where we see in all of the Western countries. And more, political figures from across everywhere are paying attention to each other, listening to each other, communicating with each other, coming up with common strategies. And that's definitely a new development.
Yes. Just on that specific point, so will you say that you do believe that there's hope for the Western civilization, that things can go in the right direction? This election results can contribute to that. Maybe, there was quite a shift in alliances, political alliances in some European countries lately. There's all kinds of plans to bring immigration under control. And if you look at the shift amongst young people, it was for me really interesting at Germany. The Germans thought that they can lower the voting age in this election to 16, but then all the young people voted for more conservative parties, well, there was quite a shift, So, do you feel that there's some signs of hope?
Yes, absolutely. It's definitely interesting. You mentioned the youth vote, and that was in Germany, I believe. AfD was the highest or tied or right around with the Christian Democrats, the youngest demographic. And if you look at Austria, Flanders, in Belgium, and actually in the Netherlands, you saw very similar patterns. So that's interesting. As far as is Western civilization to be saved and stuff? Well, that remains to be seen. But I do believe it is possible. Yes. Now, will these elections have? The interesting thing about the European elections that we just had is, on one hand, there was definitely a big and sustained gain for the right all across Europe, as I said, in a small, large, east, west, north, south. But on the other hand, it was not revolutionary. No. I don't think that in the European Union, we are going to see a significant change at all in the policies of the European Union. And that goes down for a multitude of reasons. Now, it will have some effect. These parties will, of course, have more resources from the seats they've gained. They'll have more voice. But so, there has not been a revolution yet in any of these countries, a true radical change. And that includes the countries where we've had, right-wing governments, such as Italy. So, I have yet to see this massive change, this massive wave coming. There's been rumblings and across, even Trump's election in 2016 in the United States did not, it did make made significant changes to the right and to the political environment in some cases. But it still didn't shake the United States, the foundation of the establishment. The establishment stayed on. Same with Brexit in the UK and these other, which were very, big events. That's the other interesting thing. The establishment, or whatever you want to call it, how they react to these developments. And, on one hand, they could say, after Trump's election, after Brexit, after this recent European election and other, okay, something's, gone wrong. We need to readjust here. We need to take back. But that does not seem to be their reaction. Their reaction always seems to be to double down on current policies and just dismiss, the people as being racist or brainwashed or China or whoever has hacked or, So, it's an interesting situation.
Yes. It is in a sense the so-called deep state. You also have a kind of deep state in the European Union. If you look like at the reaction from Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, I mean, she saw this result as a victory. And yes, the centre right did well. But in a sense, I think she believes she can just go on with the status quo. And I think my last question to you will be, I think in a sense the repercussions of the European election will be more in certain countries, like in France or in Germany or so, and not necessarily in Brussels and Strasbourg.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, these European elections are more interesting as a gauge of
Yes.
wider European trends. And the fact that they will help certain parties have more resources and promote them. But that's the real question. So obviously the most immediate one is France, how that's going to shape up there. But, we have another election in Austria in the fall, I believe. We have state elections coming up in Germany. So, and even interesting with, Ireland, I heard a left-wing commentator describe it as the last domino to fall. And by that, he meant that it has yet to have any kind of populist or right party there. But they had their local elections with their European elections at the same time. And for the first time in modern Irish history, you have right-wing parties entering in these local councils. So for Ireland, that is a huge thing. There's one more thing I would like to point out.
Yes.
Everybody described it as the only right-wing parties gaining, but there was one left-wing party that actually did very well. That made significant gains, and you really don't hear about it. And that is the party of Sarah Wagenknecht in Germany. And this is one right, and its gains were just as much as the AfD's gains. And so you think that left-wing commentators and liberals, etc., would be looking at, okay, what is this party doing? Why is that the one party to win? Which is very interesting because it is a left-wing party. The leader, Sarah Wagenknecht, has a huge left-wing pedigree, far left pedigree. She actually started under the East German Communist Party. But around 2019, she took a look around and said, we've really moved away from the working class. We've gotten all these elite issues. We're focused on these gender issues, and we've really lost touch with the working class. And then she did the unthinkable. She said, maybe we're wrong here on migration, that this migration is having a disproportionate bad effect on poor people, working people, lowering wages, stressing the social services, crime, etc. And she was exiled basically out of her party. She was attacked by the left. So it's interesting that the left has really put all their eggs in one basket, pro-migration. And they're willing to sacrifice everything else: environment, wages, social care, secularism, everything else they're willing to sacrifice for that. And then the one left-wing party that tries different is the one that has success, but they're not holding that up as an example, and you're not hearing about it. So very, very strange. On what's happening on the right is very interesting, but what's happening on the left is very interesting too.
Absolutely, very interesting. I think it's something that we can really follow over the next few months. Also, there will be 3 state elections in East Germany later this year, and I think it will be really interesting because Sarah, like you've said, Sarah Wagenknecht, it's like a different kind of left-wing politics, a more national or nationalist kind of left-wing politics. Very interesting. Craig, thank you very much. It was really interesting. I think we will do this again in a few months' time.
Yes, thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Daar sy vriende. Nou ja, volgende gesels ons met 'n joernalis uit Spanje, Álvaro Peñas, ook iemand wat ek al baie mee gesels het en heelwat van sy skryfwerk gelees het in verskeie Europese publikasies. Regtig iemand wat baie goed verstaan van die Europese politiek, en ons gaan verder probeer om die uitslag van die Europese verkiesing wat verlede week plaasgevind het te analiseer. So, 'n lekker verdere bespreking oor die gevolge van hierdie Europese verkiesing. Álvaro, thank you very much for joining us. It's a privilege having you here on the program. You're joining us from Spain, I'm correct?
Yes.
Wonderful. I think let's start with Spain, maybe in the context of this European election. There was also so much interesting political developments in Spain over the last few months. You know, you have a socialist government, but it's hanging on a thread. Am I correct? And now you've seen also in the European election the further shift to the right in Spain. I think that's interesting. Much of the focus was on France and Germany, quite understandably, but I do think that the Spanish politics are very interesting.
Too much, too much interesting for Spanish people. But yes, the thing is that in these European elections, it's true that the center-right Partido Popular has the APP, yes, has risen positions, got I think 9 more MIPs. But also it's very important to see that the Socialist Party, despite all the corruption cases, despite all the problems with the amnesty, with separatism, despite that the situation is a total mess, still gets, I mean, more than 5 million votes, which is something, it's something difficult to understand. It looks like they can do whatever they want because people is going to vote for them. So, well, the good point, yes, is that the Partido Popular, yes, won this election. Vox get near a 10%. So, and there was also another, this is something I think, something which we say Spain is different, yes? We have a new party, which is called Se acabó la fiesta, which means the party is over, which is run by an influencer. And, okay, making a speech against corruption, but, very controversial things also. He gets 3 MIPs. He gets nearly 800,000 votes. So, and this is doing this by media, by social media, not by common media, no, by social media, because he has no means to do no ways to do in the normal way. So yeah, the point is that yes, the left is going down, especially in Spain, the extreme left, they has lost position, but still the situation, is quite complicated because Socialist Party is still very, very strong. And I think he's going to absorb the voters of the extreme left, or he is doing right now. So I think the win is not yet clear. We have this same situation with the local elections, with the regional elections. Everybody thought, okay, Spain is going to the right, but then we have national elections and we have again a socialist government. So it's not as clear. So Spanish Socialist Party, I think, is one of the most strongest of Europe.
Yes, it's interesting, that many of the socialist and social democrat parties in other countries, like in Germany, for instance, very good example, but also France, they've lost many votes. But in a sense, the socialists are strong in Spain. Historically, that's been the case. I mean, you've pointed it out now very clearly with the number of votes they also received. What is the historical reason? Are they just some kind of old tradition of many voters, maybe older voters or so, voting for the socialists, or what's the reason for that?
Yeah, okay. For me, there is 2 main reasons. On one side, you have that this is a party that has made like a big web of influence. So many people has interest in the Socialist Party to win the elections. And also we have, yes, all voters. We have people who is not going to change. But also this is happening with some not all people, that they are not going to change. It doesn't matter what the party does. But in Spain, this happens not the same, not as strong, but it's the same with the Partido Popular. They have like millions of voters that they are always going to be there. It looks like that, yes. So it's very difficult to change situation with this kind of voters because they don't mind about what the government is doing. They just say, no, I always vote for socialists, always. So I can put you an example, for example. This is quite interesting. A journalist I know, he was made interviews with men that has lost because of the laws against men in Spain, yes, that lost everything. And he was speaking with one person who lost his house, his job. He was nearly in poverty, yes. And when he asked him, okay, we have elections, who are you going to vote? Oh, the socialist. The journalist told him, okay, but the socialists put this law that has ruined your life. Yeah, but I will be always a socialist. So this kind of suicidal mentality, sadly, we have a lot in Spain.
Yeah,
It's one of
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
but in your but in your neighboring country, France, things are changing. You know, it's. I think that was the big international focus was on the election results from France, and then this decision by Macron to have a snap election. What do you think about that?
Well, I think Macron is a clever guy. For example, and we when this Macron made this, I remember what Pedro Sanchez, the socialist president, made in Spain after the regional elections. After the regional elections, Partido Popular won, and with Vox, he made several governments in different regions. So the map of Spain was blue, yes, the color of the Partido Popular. So he said, okay, I think that this is a signal that maybe I'm not supported, so I will make the elections in 1 month. So the elections were in the middle of July.
Oh yeah.
And everybody thought, okay, Sanchez is over. He is desperate. No, at the end, he is still the president. So I think Macron is playing the same card. He tried to get to be legitimate again. And he is going to make elections. I think he's going to be in the middle of the Olympic Games. So it's a strange situation. And also, you know that the French situation is quite particular. It's true that I think that the right wing can win more support in the parliament, but also there is many parties it looks like they still try to make this cordon sanitaire, yes, against right wing ideas. So I think he's not desperate. I think he's playing his cards.
Yes, yes. Interestingly enough, the big losers of this European election was the Green parties and the Liberal parties. Why do you think that was the case? I mean, the right-wing parties grew and they won lots of support, but the centre parties, centre-left, centre-right, were quite stable. The big losers were, if I'm correct, the Greens and the Liberals.
Yeah. Well, I think the Greens, the result of the Greens is because of the failure of the Green politics.
Yeah.
People is because for many people, they vote for Green Party because it's something like, okay, good people vote for Greens because we all want to save the planet. So now they are saying that it's much more, much, much red than green. So at the end, I think this is going. This is the for me. This is the point. I think especially because people is knowing what means the Greens politics. It sounds very good to say are going to save the planet, but when they put taxes for everything, they don't want you to take your car. So people start to say, okay, this is madness. So I think this is the point. And also with the extreme left, I think these very radical ideas, sadly supported by socialists, also supported by Renew, and in many cases by APP. I think people is rejecting this. For one side we have people more supporters of the right wing, and in the other side we said that the left is less strong, which is good news. But still we have a situation in which the EPP has the winning game with the winning card. Yes, so we have to wait. We have to see what happens. Of course, the situation in every local parliament, in the national parliament, is important because it's changing. Now we have several places where you have governments with EPP, with and with the ECR, for example, or in Italy, which for me is one of the greatest success of these elections. That it shows that the model works. So in that way we have there is hope. Yes, it's not just okay. The left has lost positions because if the EPP does not change everything, we are going to follow the same.
Yeah, yeah. I'm delighted that you mentioned Italy and Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister there. Do you think, I do get the feeling that she will try to play a bigger role in European politics, maybe in the next few months or so?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure about that. She has a very strong position.
Yes.
Italy is a very important country, and also she keeps her government very strong. So she gets this coalition with Lega and with Forza Italia, and of course she is the strongest of the three parties. And I think she's going to play because well, she even have a good relation with Ursula von der Leyen. because I think she's trying to translate this model, this Italian model, into the rest of Europe. Of course, it's not easy. The Forza Italia is not like the Partido Popular in Spain, for example. But I think we can find places where this can be possible. So I think she's going to be, for me, if someone has to lead the right, I think it's Giorgia Meloni.
Very interesting. That brings me to the point. I really wanted to ask you, you understand conservative politics in Europe very well. One of the big problems always has been the fact that parties can't work together, different leaders can't work together, you have all these internal differences. I think maybe on the one hand, right-wing or conservative parties are very much focused on their own national issues. Do you think there's an opportunity for some formation in Europe, in the European Union, for conservative parties to work better together than what was maybe the case in the past?
Well, there is an opportunity now. Many people is speaking about that this can happen. We have seen yesterday that Marine Le Pen, Rassemblement National, has a meeting with Reconquête, with until now their arch enemy. Yes, so yeah, I think it's possible, but it's also true that it's very difficult because of the national issues.
Yes.
I mean, so I think maybe, I don't know what they will do. If they get one group, this will be fantastic. But I think the main effort has to be at least to get some common points, and make a platform or something like that that defends these common points. Because in that you can join parties which are now even outside of the two big groups. It's, for example, the case of the Germans. Yes. AfD, which has a great success in Germany. But I think that for me, I think this is more easy to do, because I can put you an example. In Spain, Vox is in ECR, but Chega is in Identity and Democracy.
Yes.
Vox and Chega are very friendly groups between them. Yes, they have very good relation. But it's true that if they are in the same group, and not in Spain, but in Portugal, some people will say, okay, why we are in the same group with the Spanish, because we have issues in the past, etc., etc., etc. So I think this was a clever idea to say, okay, we can be friends, we can be together, but we are going to be separate, to show people that, yes, we look for the independence of Portugal. So it's an example, and we have many like that. So I think the idea of to get especially some common points, because also it's difficult. We also have the war in Ukraine. Hungary has one position, or other countries has a different position. But if you speak with the Baltic states, they have very clear position.
Yes,
and this is not possible to be together saying, yes, we agree. No, it's not possible to do that, because for Baltics or for Polish, this is a question of national security. So they are not going to play with that. So I think, the best way for me would be a platform with some points against migration, against gender ideology, against green, crazy packs, etc., etc.
Yeah. You mentioned Hungary, and I wanted to ask you about that. I mean, you're very knowledgeable. You understand Central and Eastern Europe very well, I know. For the last few years, I think, 4 years or so, the biggest party in Hungary, Fidesz, of Viktor Orban, was not affiliated within a political grouping in the European Union. Do you think they can play a role after this election, maybe in some way, or will they still be on their own?
Well, I think they are going to. Now it's time to make some things clear and make them together. You remember that they have even a meeting in Madrid, that they have trying to look for a cooperation. Yes. Now in this, before the European election, we have here the Viva 24 event, which we have Marine Le Pen, we have Javier Milei from Argentina, but we have people, of course, of ECR. So we have people of both groups. And of course, there was Hungarian people there. So I think, yes, they're going to take the role. And of course, Orban ideas in the way of defending family or way of defending society against the gender ideology are a model for the rest of conservative parties in Europe. So yeah, I think they will take an active role this time. So I think this is the best moment to do it. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Now, just for our listeners and also people who may be watching this, you are writing regularly for the American, not the American, the European Conservative, and I think people can read there in English the articles. What are your feeling after this election and after several elections in European nations about broadly the conservative movement in Europe, maybe even in the West also? Do you think things are going in the right direction? There's greater cooperation between different groups in different nations. There's also more alternative media, clearly, broadly, what's your feeling about where we stand today on the position of the conservative movement in Europe?
Yeah, I think yes, things are moving on the right direction because of the bad situation. Yes, we say in Spain, I don't know how to translate in English. In Spain, we say a fuerza organ. It's like when you are going to be hanged, you know that you have to do something. This is the time. You cannot wait. You cannot wait more time. So
No.
I think many people is understanding now that Europe was going down. We have these objectives of the 2030 agenda, which are just 6 years from now. And we are looking at people were trying to do these things, and they don't mind in the European Parliament what is the real situation. They don't mind the things they have to, the citizens have to pay, the farmers, the situation of many people who was going really bad. So I think, yes, that is moving people to act. But also it's true that I think we need more media for supporting the right wing. I think we also need more people to understand that this the cultural battle or cultural fight, as we want to, cultural war, as we want to call it, is important because we still see that some right wing parties just believe that, okay, I am doing well in the economy, so no problem. I'm going to win. People is going to support me, and at the end they lose because they have lost. Yes, they have fit the people, but they have lost their minds. So at the end, people is taking the wrong direction, and also I think we have to use the bad situation we have now to improve the conservative ideas of movement. For one good example is the disaster with the war. We saw Ursula von der Leyen saying that Europe needs industry, heavy industry, because we have to we have to construct weapons and munition and everything. So this is an opportunity to say, okay, stop thinking in green Disneyland and these kind of things, and be realistic with the situation we have, and also with for example, to make people to use the only way to have a good army or to have people who a strong nation is patriotism. So if you want to defend against the enemy, you need patriotism, and you are not going to fight patriotism in LGBTQ ideas or gender. No, the only way to fight patriotism is in your national history and in your national values. So yeah, I think we have to take this opportunity.
Great. Thank you so much. That's a very important point. I really appreciate you taking part in this discussion. I hope that we can do it again in a few months' time. I would really like to have only a program focused on Spain, maybe, and the politics of Spain. So it's so interesting. We didn't even get to things like Catalonia and everything happening there, but we will do that certainly in the future. Alvaro, thank you very much.
We will just need 10 hours to speak about the situation in Spain.
Absolutely so. But we will do that certainly. Thank you so much for your time. Vriende, dit was vandag se program. Ons het baie Engels gepraat, maar met goeie rede. Ek glo julle het nou 'n goeie insig in die uitslag van die Europese verkiesing en ja, die politieke verwikkelinge en bewegings in Europa. Ek dink ons het nou vir eers 'n bietjie genoeg gepraat oor Europa. Volgende week in ons program gaan ons weer net Afrikaans praat en ons gaan 'n bietjie kyk oor Suid-Afrika se posisie internasionaal. 'n Paar dae gelede het BRICS ministers van buitelandse sake in Rusland ontmoet. Suid-Afrika se minister van buitelandse sake, Naledi Pandor, was ook teenwoordig. Wat beteken dit vir Suid-Afrika se internasionale aansien? Hoe gaan Suid-Afrika se rol met die nuwe regering wat ons nou kry hier in Suid-Afrika, hoe gaan dit internasionaal verander? Hoe gaan dit ons raak? Want Dit raak gewone Suid-Afrikaners, ons handel, invoere, uitvoere. Ons gaan volgende week 'n bietjie net daaroor gesels. Baie dankie vir almal wat gereeld elke week inskakel hier op wêreldwyd. Onthou, jy kan dit luister op Spotify, op Apple, natuurlik ook die video kyk op Marula Media en op YouTube. Volg asseblief hierdie program en stuur op vir ons enige voorstelle, kritiek, enige kommentaar. Tot volgende week.